Before he became a symbol, before monuments and currency, George Washington was a young man learning how to govern himself. He was born in 1732 in colonial Virginia, into a world that did not promise greatness. His father died when George was 11. No inheritance of wealth, no elite European education, no shortcuts. What he inherited instead was responsibility, early, unavoidable, and heavy. Washington learned discipline not from books but from necessity. As a teenager, he trained himself to observe, to measure land, to walk miles in silence. Surveying the wilderness was not glamorous work. It required patience, precision, and solitude. These early years formed a habit that would define him for life, control the self before attempting to control circumstances. At 16, he copied by hand a list titled Rules of Civility and Decent Behavior. They were not laws. No one forced him to follow them. That was the point. Stoicism begins where enforcement ends, when character replaces supervision. Washington failed early. As a young officer in the British colonial militia, he made tactical mistakes that cost lives. He misjudged terrain. He underestimated opponents. And instead of deflecting blame, he absorbed the lesson. Stoics do not deny failure, they metabolize it. During the French and Indian War, Washington experienced defeat, retreat, and humiliation. He also witnessed death at close range. Horses were shot beneath him. Bullets tore through his coat. Survival did not inflate his ego, it sharpened his restraint. He began to understand a core Stoic truth. Fate is uncontrollable, but conduct is not. Years later, when tensions with Britain ignited open rebellion, Washington did not rush forward hungry for power. He was chosen, reluctantly, to command the Continental Army, and he accepted not as a conqueror, but as a servant. The army he inherited was undertrained, underpaid, underfed, and constantly on the edge of collapse. Desertion was common, supplies were scarce, victory was uncertain. Stoicism does not promise favorable conditions, only clarity of duty within unfavorable ones. Washington endured. At Valley Forge, winter became an enemy as real as the British. Soldiers froze, they starved, they bled. Washington did not dramatize suffering. He shared it, he stayed. He wrote letters not of despair, but of resolve. Stoicism teaches that leadership is not optimism, it is steadiness. He lost more battles than he won. That is rarely mentioned. But Stoics measure success differently. Washington understood that survival itself was strategy. He preserved the army when others demanded reckless glory. He resisted emotional decisions. He waited. And that restraint, quiet, disciplined, patient, changed history. He did not try to be invincible. He tried to be unbreakable. Interesting fact. During the Revolutionary War, Washington had 2 horses shot from under him and 4 bullets passed through his coat. Yet he was never wounded, reinforcing his reputation among soldiers as a man protected not by luck, but by purpose. Victory tests character more than defeat. When the war ended, Washington stood at a crossroads few humans ever face. He commanded the only functioning national army. The people adored him. Some officers openly suggested he should rule as king. History had trained the world to expect exactly that. Washington refused. Stoicism teaches that true power is the ability to walk away. And so, in an act almost unheard of in the century, he resigned his command and returned to private life. No force compelled him. No law required it. He did it because self-rule mattered more than authority. Years later, chaos forced him back. The young nation was fragile. Debt, division, and distrust threatened collapse. Once again, Washington did not seek the role of president. He accepted it as duty, not desire. As the first president of the United States, he governed cautiously. He listened more than he spoke. He restrained his own influence. He rejected excess. Stoics understand that institutions outlive individuals, and Washington designed the presidency to survive without him. He endured constant criticism. He was attacked by newspapers, rivals, even former allies. Instead of retaliating emotionally, he maintained composure. Stoicism is not silence, it is selective response. After 2 terms, he stepped down voluntarily. Again, this second refusal of power was more important than the first. It established a precedent stronger than law. Leadership ends. Ego does not get to stay. In his farewell address, Washington warned against factionalism, blind partisanship, and foreign manipulation. These were not political strategies, they were moral cautions. He spoke like a Stoic elder who had seen how easily republics decay when emotions replace principles. In retirement, Washington did not seek comfort. He managed his land. He continued learning. He remained disciplined until the end. He died in 1799, not rich, not adored by everyone, not mythologized yet, but respected. And respect, in Stoic terms, is the residue of consistent virtue over time. Washington's greatness was not that he never wanted power. It was that he never let desire override judgment. That is Stoicism in action. Not passive, not weak, but restrained strength. One day, the King George reportedly said that if Washington truly surrendered power and returned home, he would be the greatest man in the world, a rare acknowledgement from the very monarch he had defeated. Stoicism is not tested in moments of recognition. It is tested in silence, when effort continues without reward. After the early victories that gave the revolution hope, the war dragged on. Years passed with no decisive end. Soldiers went unpaid. Congress argued. Supplies vanished. Confidence eroded. Washington stood in the middle of it all, not as a hero, but as a stabilizer. He wrote hundreds of letters, calm letters, controlled letters, letters that balanced urgency with restraint. Stoics understand that panic spreads faster than truth, and Washington refused to become a source of panic. He faced betrayal. Officers plotted against him in what became known as the Conway Cabal. Instead of crushing them publicly, Washington dismantled the conspiracy quietly. No rage. No theatrics. He let facts suffocate ambition. This was not weakness. It was mastery. He understood something many leaders never learn. Authority does not need noise. It needs consistency. The army survived not because it was strong, but because it did not disintegrate. Washington preserved morale by modeling emotional control. He did not promise easy victory. He promised effort. Stoicism teaches that hope must be anchored in action, not fantasy. Washington avoided decisive battles when conditions were wrong. Critics called him timid. History later called him patient. He chose long-term survival over short-term applause. That decision saved the revolution. When French support finally arrived, it was not because Washington demanded it emotionally, but because he proved reliability over time. Allies trust those who govern themselves. At Yorktown, the war effectively ended. Celebration followed. Washington allowed it, briefly. Then he returned to order. Victory, to a Stoic, is not indulgence. It is closure. He reminded his officers that the real danger was ahead, what comes after triumph. Because revolutions often fail not at birth, but in success. Interesting fact. Washington personally rejected a proposal from officers to overthrow Congress and install him as ruler, responding with moral outrage rather than fear. Being first means there is no script. When Washington assumed the presidency, nothing was defined, not its limits, not its tone, not its duration. Every gesture would become precedent. Stoics are acutely aware of this weight. Your behavior today becomes someone else's excuse tomorrow. So Washington acted deliberately. He spoke rarely. He listened often. He dressed plainly. He avoided displays of excess. Even his manner of greeting people was intentional, respectful, but distant. Familiarity erodes institutions. He refused to become emotionally entangled in party warfare. Though political factions formed around him, he resisted identifying with either side. Stoicism rejects tribal identity when it clouds judgment. Criticism intensified. Newspapers accused him of monarchy, corruption, incompetence. Washington read many of these attacks in silence. He understood that reacting emotionally would legitimize them. Instead, he focused on structure, peaceful transfers of authority, civilian control of the military, neutrality in foreign conflicts. These decisions lacked drama. That was their strength. Stoics build systems, not cults. Washington also struggled privately. He feared failing the nation. He feared history's judgment. Stoicism does not eliminate fear. It prevents fear from becoming command. After 8 years, he left office. No law forced him. No illness stopped him. No uprising demanded it. He stepped away because restraint demanded it. That single act did more to secure American democracy than any battle. In retirement, Washington did not fade into comfort. He woke early, managed his estate, studied agriculture, experimented with crop rotation. Even away from power, discipline remained. Stoicism is not situational. It is habitual. He received constant visitors. Many sought advice. Some sought favors. Washington offered counsel, not influence. He had learned the danger of personal dependency. When political tensions escalated again, Washington resisted involvement. He believed that stability required new leaders to stand without. His shadow, his final illness, came suddenly. He faced it with composure. No dramatic speeches, no resistance to reality. Stoicism teaches acceptance, not passivity, but clarity. He arranged his affairs, spoke calmly, prepared. The nation mourned not because he was flawless, but because he was restrained. History remembers conquerors, but civilizations endure because of men who stop themselves. Washington's Stoicism was not philosophical. It was practical, lived, applied. That is why it still matters. Interesting fact. Washington freed his enslaved workers in his will, making him the only major founding father to do so unconditionally. Stoicism is not about detachment from life. It is about commitment without possession. Washington embodied this paradox. He cared deeply, but never clung. He served fully, but never claimed ownership. He held power, but never indulged it. Modern leadership often mistakes dominance for strength. Washington proved the opposite. Self-restraint outlasts force. He left no empire, no dynasty, no throne. He left a standard. That standard is uncomfortable. It demands inner order. It rejects excuses. It requires saying no, especially to yourself. That is why Stoicism remains difficult, and why Washington remains relevant. He mastered not the world, but his role in it. Thank you for your attention. Subscribe for more video. And have a good day.